Hello everybody, and welcome. I am here chatting with Sarah, and Sarah is an autistic person and who works supporting autistic and neurodivergent people in various ways. Sarah's a specialist coach and runs support groups, as well as helping those in higher education. And Sarah is also an activist and advocate with a large Twitter following. And Sarah has very kindly said that she would chat with me today about some of her experiences around autism as part of our Autism Acceptance Week stuff. So, Sarah, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me.
It's a pleasure.
Firstly, I just wanted to ask you, we've got Autism Acceptance Week coming up, and I was wondering, kind of from your point of view, what the work is that still needs to be done around awareness and acceptance.
It's huge, but I guess if we're just going to summarize it, I think in some ways I almost feel awareness has been achieved. Like, most people have heard of autism, but they don't either understand what it is, or just it's based on like complete stereotypes, which is just not true. So I think it's really kind of the proper like understanding and acceptance, I guess, I think it's the key thing, because like every autism awareness and acceptance week that comes up, I'm always aware of like autistic people feeling anxious about all the negative things that come up and the assumptions people make. So I think for me that's probably the key thing, and that has like a knock-on real world effect of so many different things. But yeah, if I was going to summarize it, that's probably what I'd say.
That makes so much sense. I think there's something about taking it forward from being something that is just tokenistic to it being something that is really kind of understood and meant, a bit like with, you know, some of the LGBTQ plus stuff about pride, where sometimes it can become a bit of a like media, you know, consumerist thing, and it's actually kind of making it real and people really understanding what it means.
Ruth, you're frozen on me. I don't know if you can hear me.
Let me pause. Yeah, so a bit like with the LGBTQ plus stuff, that it can become a bit tokenistic, and I think there's something really important about making it real and getting rid of some of those stereotypes that still seem to kind of be around in the media so much. Actually, on that note, I just wondered, there's been a lot of dramas and a lot of content on platforms like Netflix and kind of other streaming and media sites. And I just wondered what your take was on some of the things that have been put out, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's both.
Yeah, I mean, it is really mixed. It depends what it is. And again, there's some I've heard of that I really want to watch that I actually haven't had the chance to watch yet. But there's some where it's like, some are good, some are bad, but overall it's okay. There's some, to be honest, are just absolute rubbish, and it's just like, why? I'm asking myself, you know. But yeah, I think it's a really mixed bag in terms of kind of what's out there, because I think as well some people are starting to get it, but it's still very early days. So I think in terms of like good representation, I think there's still a long way to go for it to be across the board.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. As you say, it's like it's getting it so that it's really understood, and that making a real life difference in terms of everyday people's experience. So you are, as I know, an excellent Twitterer, and you have a pretty wide following on Twitter. And I just wondered, you know, what your experience had been as an autistic person on Twitter, whether there had been some real positives or negative experiences you had. What you kind of learned from it or been able to achieve through it.
Yeah, so I mean, Twitter's an interesting one. I always say I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. I think overall it has been positive, but again, I think most people who are aware of social media are aware of kind of all the trolls and toxicness that comes from Twitter. So it's one of those things where it can be good, but it's almost like proceed with caution, I'd probably say. But I think as well, what's been really, I think the main positives for me have certainly been, I think, connecting with other like autistic and neurodivergent people. So I think in your immediate life, you may not necessarily know anyone. I mean, I do now, but not necessarily when I was first diagnosed. So I found that really helpful. And then I think, you know, as I kind of got more involved with interacting on there, kind of that's where my account grew, and it's kind of I guess I've been using it a bit more educationally, trying to, I guess, provide a more lived experience perspective of it. But, you know, I still tweet about other stuff, like in my daily life. It's not all like autism stuff, like all the cat posts are still on there for sure and everything. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think if I see, because I think as well, I think when I first started growing, I wasn't necessarily aware of always like pitfalls on Twitter. I think as well, using Twitter with just a few hundred followers is very different to like I think about 14,000 that I've got now. Like it's a completely different ball game for sure. So yeah, you've got to be a bit more kind of mindful and savvy, I think, interacting on Twitter.
I think it's fantastic though, because I mean, I just, you know, from my experience of following you and following other autistic and neurodivergent advocates, you know, the fact that, you know, it's really easy for people to meet, you know, in inverted commas, real autistic, real neurodivergent people and get an experience of what that's like. I think that can be so powerful, you know, to changing people's understandings and to breaking some of those kind of myths and stereotypes, as well as just building really lovely communities. I'm on the Reddit one as well, and there's some brilliant like communities that go on where, you know, just people supporting each other in terms of what they're experiencing, and I think that can be really cool. And definitely it's you know, individuals like yourself, I think, kind of, you know, making taking a stand, I suppose, to talk about stuff that previously would never have been spoken about. You know, the idea of what it's like to, you know, deal with neurotypical, you know, ridiculousness and when it comes to small talk or whatever, like stuff that would never have been mentioned now coming up is epic.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So I know that you were diagnosed later in life, and I was just wondering kind of if you could share maybe just a little bit, I know it's a huge topic, but just a little bit about what it was like to grow up as an undiagnosed person.
I mean, if I could summarize it in one word, probably traumatizing. And I think that's because your whole life as well, I don't know how much people are aware of the concept of masking, listening, but it's that kind of expectation or ability to conform, and if you don't conform within that narrow social expectations, you know, consequences are pretty severe. So, and again, doing that for the odd interaction here, that I guess every human does that to some extent, but when it's your whole identity, and I did that solidly for about 20 years, it's exhausting. And you know, just I guess there's just no, or I think authentic self, and blaming yourself for when things go wrong, or for just feeling so crap at being a person, because like what society tells you what being human's like doesn't necessarily match up with how I experience the world. And I think that that's probably just the best way I can summarize it, really. It's just, yeah, it's intense. So I think getting that diagnosis, you know, it's probably was entirely like for personal reasons, being like, you know, oh, it wasn't because I was like a failed human or anything. It's just I didn't know I was autistic.
I think that's such a, as you say, traumatic is a absolutely, you know, accurate word for it. The whole, because everything, you know, pre-diagnosis is not known, and it's also so invisible, you know, the feeling of kind of taking it into yourself and blaming yourself is something that other people have shared with me a lot, because, you know, there's no understanding, there's no explanation, and so you kind of feel like it's your fault, and people often saying to you it's your fault as well. You know, why can't you get this? Why aren't you doing it right? Why are you being weird? You know, all of this stuff that gets kind of layered on, and which is understandably like supremely toxic to have to deal with. Well, a lot of autistic people experience, you know, kind of mental health difficulties because they've had to deal with kind of stigma and prejudice for such a long time. I mean, from your point of view, I just wondered, you know, if you were going to give, I don't know, professionals, whether they're therapists or coaches or doctors, some golden tips or advice or things that they really need to understand when it comes to supporting autistic people, what do you think would be some of the most important things that still need to be grasped or should be considered?
Oh, this is a really good question. I think a lot of it, people think, you know, if you just encourage people with rewards, or if there's going to be a consequence for them not behaving neurotypical, that's going to help. I would say just abandon it. I know it's a lot of people's like philosophical beliefs, but it's just not going to work because there's no appreciation for that person's different lived experience, and you're just going to teach them to mask. And again, I know that's more formally called applied behavior analysis, or ABA. But it's one of those things, a lot of things I don't think are necessarily labeled ABA, but philosophically they are. But I think as well it's to be compassionate, but also be curious rather than making assumptions. I think it's really important, just because it may seem like something may not seem, I guess, typical to you. It's thinking about, but why is that thing really important to that person? And there could be a valid reason from their perspective, and quite often I think there's a mismatch there.
I think there was just golden ones, absolutely golden ones. Your point about really abandoning the kind of idea of trying to change someone to become more neurotypical, I think is so important. There's, for such a long time, there's been this kind of within the medical or within the therapeutic world, there's been a push to somehow fix people or cure people or get them on the right path. And I think the reality is that that's just nonsense most of the time. And it's about helping people to become themselves in a fuller, happier way, more than anything else.
And I think as well, it's one of those things, you may seem like a short-term benefit and everyone's like, oh, it works, but it's like, no, that's because you've taught them to put on a performance, and that has a long-term, like, significant impact on mental health. And I think that's what's missing. They see short-term results, they think, right, job done, this is evidence-based, gold standard, whatever. But actually, if asked those same people 20 years down the line, the impact it had. And I know there's one study that's come out that I said a possible association PTSD with people who were kind of put through those types of therapies. So it's one of those things, I think it's kind of still developing, I guess, like the more formal academic knowledge about it. But when I saw that, it was pretty
that's really interesting. It obviously, going back to your point about masking, that actually it may just be perpetuating people kind of putting on some kind of performance, but also that it can be traumatizing in itself, which kind of makes sense if you're not being able to be your authentic self, and feeling like you can't within every situation that you're in. And I love the stuff that you said about compassion and curiosity. At NSPC, we're obviously primarily existentially based. And so kind of that idea of just exploring the other person's lived experience is like really key to all of our work and our courses. And I think that is just so central, that there's just a genuine curiosity for that other person, whatever their labels are, wherever they come from, being totally open and excited about seeing, the world through their eyes. One of the things that I've been talking about with some of my autistic colleagues is autistic joy.
Oh, I love the concept of autistic joy. It's brilliant.
Do you want to just introduce it to the people we've got listening? What's autistic joy mean?
So it's basically, it's just happiness that you get kind of that's from your autism, or your autism plays a part in some of the happiness that you may be experiencing different moments. So I know there's a stereotype of kind of the whole special interests. I just generally call them interests. There's nothing special to them. They're just something that give you joy. And, when you're able to hyper focus in that, or, if it's a weekend and you can just proper delve into that, and it just can make you really happy, and, just give you that warm feeling inside. But also as well, I know some people can get it through stimming as well, I've heard, which obviously is like moving with the body. And it's something where it's like, you just kind of know that you wouldn't be getting this much joy from something if you weren't autistic. Like, you still may be enjoying it, but and I think, yes, there are challenges being autistic in this world, but actually it's not all negative. And I think, autistic joy is certainly a big part of the pros.
We've sent out a little Twitter shout to people to send in their different experiences about autistic joy, and we got some brilliant feedback about a whole range of things, including like gaming and the watching fires and the lights and stuff, and a whole range, and people just kind of the the awesomeness of being able to really engage with these things and how epic they were. And it was really great to kind of just spend some time hearing people's thoughts on that. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Before we finish up then, I just wondered what projects and stuff you're involved in at the moment, and if there's anything in particular that you are kind of working on or pushing forward right now.
Oh god, there's so much. The thing is, I'm kind of here, there and everywhere. It's frustrating because there's some stuff that's potentially coming up that I can't talk about that's really exciting.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. Okay, we'll have to get you back and you can talk about it when it's over.
So I can't really talk about it yet. I mean, it's not a definite, but if it does become a thing, that would be really exciting. Stuff I'm involved with, so obviously we're trying to develop SNAP at the moment, so that's one big thing, which is the Society of Neurodivergent. Oh my gosh, I've got a bit of brain fog still from COVID.
That is absolutely fine. So yeah, Society for Neurodivergent and Autistic Practitioners, and it's the idea to get professionals together to put together some standards for those who are working with autistic and neurodivergent people, so that we can really ensure that there is a standard of care and standard of professionalism for everyone who's working in that area. So that's something that Sarah and I are working on together at the moment with others, which is really cool.
Yeah, so that's one thing. I've also been going through some of the autism modules that Ruth had sent me, and that's been really fun. Also as well, I'm kind of helping to develop some training with some people, and I'm still kind of running the groups and doing all my other things as well. So I occasionally do presentations as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit here, there and everywhere. There's like lots of small little things going on, but it's exciting.
Wow, it is fantastic to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience, Sarah, and maybe we'll get you back to find out more about what's going on. But thank you so much, and hope to speak to you soon.
Yeah, speak soon.